Hello, friends, and welcome to the PowHERful Podcast. I'm your host, AJ McCord. In this podcast, we introduce you to powerful women who are changing the game in and outside of their field of play. These are women's stories, women who happen to be doing things that many of us can only dream of, but the lessons and inspiration they share is universal. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the PowHERful Podcast. I'm your host, AJ McCord, and as you can hear, I have had a little bit of a run-in with who knows what lately, so please forgive my voice today. Mystique Ro is joining the podcast. She is a complete badass in the sport of skeleton. This is one of those sports that every single time it comes around in the Winter Games, I watch these athletes and I'm like, dang, they must be like crazy to want to hurdle themselves down an ice track face first, going 70 miles an hour. And what I learned in this conversation with Mystique is that actually, she's the opposite. She's a bit of an introvert who likes to crochet. She grew up in a house of 11 kids. She is originally from Virginia. And if it weren't for the women before her who personally reached out to create this opportunity for her, she may never have done it. And it's a really powerful lesson in staying open to things that you never would have anticipated for yourself, and actually how much zen she finds on the track. It was so eye-opening for me. She's such an amazing person, and I cannot wait for you guys to get to know her. So I hope you enjoy this episode of the PowHERful Podcast. Welcome back to the PowHERful Podcast. You guys, I am so excited for this next episode because this woman recently ended one of the longest U.S. droughts for a victory in this sport since it was reintroduced in 2002. We'll get to why it was removed from the Olympics during this podcast. But this is one of those sports that every 4 years when you watch it, you're like, who can do this? Who is brave enough to do this? The answer, Mystique Ro. She is joining us on this podcast. I'm so excited to have one of the best skeleton racers in the entire world joining us. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to share the story and kind of generate some interest as we get to the close of the game.
Well, girl, so the interest is there, let me tell you, because every single time I watch the Winter Games, the skeleton comes on, I see you and your teammates running down full speed this ice track, and then you jump onto this sled thing, and your chin is like an inch from the ice. So I want to start at the beginning. How did you look at this sport and say, yep, this is the one for me?
Funny enough, I did not share that sentiment when I first started. I come from track and field background, and so there was a big wide net casting call, if you will, from Alana Myers-Taylor asking for interest, and I was like, I could try bobsled, that'd be really cool. And so I did the whole rookie combine, and I put up some pretty good numbers. But when they got to the stats about me, they realized I was kind of short and small. They're like, yeah, you should probably try skeleton. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So we went to a rookie driving school, and I went down for the first time, and you go halfway down the track, so it's 30 miles an hour. And I was like, this is not for me. I'm not doing this. This is dumb. I was appalled that someone would willingly do this for competition. And I gave myself the truck ride back up to our starting point. And I was like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I didn't die. It's okay. And then I gave myself a couple more runs, and then you start to get a little bit addicted because it's oh, this was a little bit cleaner. This was a little bit faster. And then little by little, you start to get more interested, and then you start chasing the speed versus shying away from it. So now here we are.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Now here we are setting records for the Americans, getting ready to compete hopefully in 2026 for Team USA. But go back to that first time down, because how did you, so I know Elena sent out a casting call, but what was your first time experiencing the sport? Because it sounds like your first time seeing it was the same reaction as most people, which is that's crazy. Not for me. I don't know who would do that.
Yeah, so I didn't even know about the winter sliding sports. I watched 2010 for the Vancouver, and I saw Holcomb, and I was like, oh, it's cool. And I never really thought much about it. And then years later, then I see bobsled again. I'm like, whatever. You cheer for America and then go about your life. And it wasn't until I got this email that I was like, oh, this is interesting. Third time's a charm of it, being introduced to it again. And so when we got to Lake Placid, we didn't have an ice track or an ice house at the time, and that track wasn't ice, so we were pushing on the rails. So essentially it's a dry land track where there's a sled on wheels, and you're running down a slope on a hillside, just trying to simulate the push. And it's really awkward, they don't have the right helmet, so you're kind of front heavy, so your head's about to drop the whole time.
Oh
And
no.
it was a lot of just like getting comfortable running on one side, running bent over. So it's just going through the really weird, awkward phases. Because it definitely is not that smooth when you first start, when you see us running on ice. It's a lot of like tripping and falling and wiping out. And then eventually you start to get your rhythm and you start to pick up more speed, and then you have to keep up with it. And then an unfortunate reality is not every ramp is the same. So you have to learn a new ramp every week pretty much. So it's a lot of learning on the fly all the time.
A lot of learning on the fly while hurdling yourself face first down an ice track.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really good. Yeah. Okay. Cool. 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 What was it? So you did track and field in college. What do you think is the thing that has really like translated for you? Maybe not even just like athletically, but this desire and like the ability to get addicted to a sport like this. Like, what is it about you and your personality that you're like, oh yeah, I like. Where does that come from?
So I think my core was hurdles, but I was a heptathlete. So I think the heptathlete part kicked in a lot when we're traveling to a new track every week. So you have to be able to compartmentalize. Like Segolda does not drive the same as St. Moritz. So you have to be able to turn your brain on and off with those different styles of track. But then as a hurdler, what we found is a lot of our previous hurdlers have really good success as push athletes because of the mechanics, because of the form that you're bringing from track and field, the crossover. So the trick is to not allow yourself over time to get so tight and so far removed from that type of training style because of the mechanics you're running and because of the awkward positions you're being forced to be in. That was a huge advantage in the beginning when I first started. As I get a little older, you get a little more lazy because you're just so tired, but it's really, really important to go back to the roots of what got you to the sport to begin with.
Now that you've gotten into the sport the way that you have, what do you think is like your favorite part about being a part of the Team USA sliding team?
Hmm. I think personally, like obviously the competition's great. The athletes that you meet on the way are really awesome. It's a really small, tight community. But the traveling, the seeing different parts of the countries that you travel that you normally not see even as a tourist is really unique. Some places you wonder why did you put a track here, so far removed from civilization, but it draws you into different parts of the countries that we see that are so like time capsuled, I guess is the best way to put it. For better or for worse in some places, but it's just a unique perspective when we do travel. So we do get to see a lot of interesting things. And I think that's something that is very difficult to come across if you're not specifically in the sliding community.
Yeah. And so you're trying to qualify for your first Olympics here in 2026. And this season seemed like, from the outside perspective, it was like you just ramped up at every single competition. And like I mentioned at the beginning, culminating in winning, becoming the first American to win a world championship medal in skeleton since 2013. So that is a very long victory drought for Team USA. Walk me through that race and how validating it felt for you.
So Lake Placid is naturally my home track. I think there was a lot of tension, I guess, going into it because there's a lot of like the weather there is so unpredictable. And so when you think about like home field advantage, home facilities, like in theory it sounds great, but you have to get on the ice still. And what's odd is even for it being our home track, we don't actually get to be on the ice very much because of the weather delays in the beginning of the season. So that was actually my first time on the track this whole year is, the few weeks prior to World Championships, which is not ideal by any means. There's no testing equipment. There's no trying new lines. The ice is what it is, that condition. And so you're training in those conditions until they race prep it for the World Championships. And so I think what was different from last year, because we had a World Cup last year, and it was a while since we had been there because of COVID. So naturally, Lake Placid was built up to be this bigger animal again because it's a driver's track. It's very technical. It's very difficult. So there's a lot of underlying nervousness or associated with Lake Placid
Mhm.
because of that, because it's been off the circuit for so long. And then for me, like it's my home track, so it's fine. But then we have these external pressures. Our sponsors are here, our donors are here. So like, don't mess up. You need to have good results. And so normally, like I operate in my own little world where I'm just kind of like, there's a fire in the background and I'm on the swing set just hanging out. I don't know what's going on. And so my coach, Matt Antoine, does a really good job at like filtering that for me. So I kind of just operate in my own little bubble. And so last year I was crying during training because I was just overwhelmed, which is great. For this year, that didn't feel that way. I felt much more calm and collected, and I felt more prepared. So I think that was a nice precursor to get that out the way, to get more comfortable with those nerves of being on a home ice. But I think what was challenging is there's this expectation then, like on the push.
Yeah.
There's been this long-standing start record that has been untouchable for a very long time. Elena Nikitina pushed a 5:03, and the closest any non-Russian has been, I think, is like a 5:15. And so the driving is obviously very important, but there's also a race within the race about who can push fastest. And so I had this little thing where the top four pushers in the world go back head to head, and I managed to get on top, but barely. It was a tough one, but it's so fun to have these little internal races because obviously everyone's looking at the end result because it's a culmination of 4 heats. But to keep it fun for the girls, all right, what you gonna push this run? Okay, I want to push 5:14. I'm like, okay, well, one of us has to 5:13 before this is over, and it managed to be me. But it's just cool to have those kind of little fun little games we have internally for us, just to keep it level-headed so we don't get overwhelmed so much.
I want to go back to because that is such an impressive sort of the race within the race is such a unique way to break down a sport that already is like a really wild race. How does working with the rest of the women on the in the sliding sports, right? So that's bobsled, luge, and skeleton. How does having that dynamic among the team push everybody to become their best?
So with luge, the U.S. luge program specifically, they operate on their own circuit. While bobsled and skeleton, we shadow each other. Usually skeleton goes first, and bobsled usually is the races behind us. So we're always watching each other. We're starting to become more in tune with each other's schedules, and I think for luge specifically, it was really cool for them to be present because this is Lake Placid is the home headquarters of sliding in the country. So a lot of the luge athletes do live in Lake Placid. So they're in the stands, they're in the around the track wearing the USA gear. So they operate as like a group moving down the track, so we can all see them. And what's great is they understand what's going on. They know better than anyone else on the sidelines that okay, they missed the pressure, but they can make it up here. They have good speed, so they'll carry it through. So they can kind of call the shots throughout the runs. And they're extremely vibrant on the sidelines. They're very supportive, so it's been really great. Conversely, you have the bobsledders, who are like rowdy bunch of people, very much football-esque, and which is great for them. In skeleton, we're a lot more zen. Typically, like you're not gonna see me screaming at the line. I'm not gonna be banging my head or anything. Like I'm usually just swaying and just very chill. And that's something that they've had to learn how to adopt because like they can't scream for us the same way. Not until we get off the block, then they can scream as much as they want. But they've learned that we're very different people, and so once you get through the learn, okay, what kind of cheering do they need? What kind of support? How can we help them? That's when we found the most balance to be able to help each other whenever possible. So it's been interesting learning about each other's personalities, the different disciplines for sure.
It's so interesting. So I was a competitive gymnast. And like we see it still with all the gymnastics teams, right? Where their teammates, especially on floor, everybody has a spot that they go to. They memorize a part of the gymnast routine. And so you see, Jordan Childs out on the floor and her team, like her UCLA or Team USA teammates are like mimicking her floor routines and like they have a cheer. It's such a special camaraderie because similar to gymnastics, you are a part of the team, but when you're out there, it's just you and your choices that have led you to the point where you're hurdling yourself down this ice track. How has, I guess you explained it a little bit, but I'd love to go deeper into, you mentioned Alana Myers Taylor is the reason really that you got into skeleton. How has that really developed sliding as a group of sports become such a more competitive one for Team USA? Like, how has that dynamic played into you personally feeling like, yeah, it might just be me on the track when I'm out there, for my run, but I know I've got all this support and I know that they're there and I can hear them once I get off the block or I can see them as I come around the turn. Like, how does that play into as an athlete in an individual sport, almost being able to tap into that team aspect?
Yeah, what's interesting is you're right. We do get on the track by ourselves, and I can't phone in my coach, Matt. What do I do? Like, 'cause this is all with us in 60 seconds. So it's very much whatever I did preparation wise is going to be manifested down the track. So what's unique is typically in a perfect world, right, you have a team of like 3 guys, 3 girls, and you guys travel around the world to these tracks, and everyone's going down the track. Let's say you have a normal training week where you have 6 training runs, and then you have your race day. So you have a total of 6 runs per person going into a race. If everyone's on the same page and trying to work together, you have 6 times 6 runs, 6 athletes times 6 runs worth of data and information, a collect of things to compare. And so the theory is you should have a lot more knowledge going in because you guys are all sharing information. That doesn't always happen, unfortunately. So it's a lot of relying on, you find your person in the team, you find your person in the sport if you're collaborating with another nation, and you share notes, you share feedback, because no 2 runs are the same, no 2 days of conditions are the same. So it's a live sport where things are constantly shifting. One day the curve could be very open, the next day they could have iced it up, and now the profile is different. So there's real-time feedback that's necessary, and it's virtually impossible to do it on your own. So you are relying on the coaches in the track who are walking, or the athletes who are helping you film, or whoever's coming. Because sometimes we'll have bobsled coaches that are just watching skeleton sleds, and then they'll come talk to us like, "Hey, I know I'm not a skeleton athlete, but that looks like a weird line. Is that what you meant to do?" And I'm like, "No, I was panicking." And they're like, "Okay, well, this is what we think you should do." So you do rely on a lot of the any eyes available is always helpful. Any knowledge, especially like the senior coaches who've been around for decades, like that's invaluable knowledge. And the quicker we can like figure out how to get that out of their brains and put it on a hard drive to be able to tell future sliders, that'd be really, really impressive. But we do rely on oration. A lot of it is talking. It's very visual. So as many cameras as possible to get in the track. And hey, I wasn't able to slide, but I filmed your curve 6. Cool, thank you. You know, and that kind of feedback is really important. That's how we kind of learn quicker versus waiting till the end of the day to then talk about what you think you remembered on recall, which is not always reliable.
Yeah, that's incredible to have that element of teamwork, like learning from your teammate even when you're not on the track. That feels like a really important aspect to being able to put together a complete run when you don't get as many reps on a track around the world as you probably would like to. I want to go back to the beginning because you are one of how many siblings?
Oh, I have 10 siblings, so I'm one of 11.
One of 11. And where do we fall in the 11?
I'm number 2 technically. I have an older half brother, so I'm my dad's oldest kid. And so there's Nick, and then me, Melody, Emmanuel, Gabriel, Israel, Joel, Julia, Micah, Isaiah, and Ezekiel. Um, and that's just the following order.
What is the age range between 1 and 11?
So my older brother is 3 years older. Oh geez, I'm 30. I turned 31, so he would have been 34 this year. And then the youngest, he's graduating high school, so he should be 18, I want to say.
Okay.
So yeah, not too big of a gap between individual athletes, siblings, but there's definitely a height range for sure. The youngest is 6'6". I am not 6'6". I'm 5'3.5", 5'4" on a good day. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what was it like growing up as the second oldest? Because your dad was a Marine. He was a part of the U.S. Marines.
Yep.
So describe what it felt like to grow up in such a large family, and tell me just a little bit about like your family and what it was like to grow up in it.
Yeah, so there's 8 boys and 3 girls, and obviously, like growing up, there wasn't that many at the time, but it was just a growing family over time. So we started in California, and then eventually moved to the East Coast. So between Maryland and Virginia, we bumped up and down. And as the eldest daughter, I embody that role, whether I liked it or not. But you're essentially the third parent. So it's a lot of taking care of the younger siblings, being that point of contact in the household, and that person that's responsible when mom's out or mom's occupied. So I definitely learned responsibility very early. I learned how to manage a household, laundry, dishes, and cooking and all that stuff, just to help give my mom some relief. And so a lot of the responsibilities I learned did manifest later on as the more nurturing member of the team when I became an athlete. But in the actual household itself, doing laundry for 14 people sucks. Washing dishes of Thanksgiving is horrible. But it's definitely a lot of memories for sure. And I think it's very unique because you don't see many large families these days like that. I mean, back when we were young growing up, we would go to church and there's families of 8, families of 10, and so there's that little community there. But obviously, as you go to regular public school, you don't see that, and so it's always an anomaly. People are like, "Oh my gosh, you have 8 brothers?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah," and then it's like you're fighting.
I do, I
You're
do.
Yeah, it's like it's just normal, but you forget that it's so different in this society. And food was a riot. You have to be quick on your plate, or you're not gonna get seconds, and you're fighting for scraps sometimes, and so you start hoarding food in your room, or just like because they eat so much, it's so hard to feed them. And it's like I had my brothers down for summer a little while ago, and I'm like, you gotta go. I can't feed you. You're eating too much. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, no, it's just talking. No, you eat steaks. You gotta go back to the house. You gotta go back to your mother. Mom, take him back. I can't feed him no more. But no, it's really fun. Like unfortunately, when I went to college, there was a window of time I wasn't around my youngest siblings, and so we're kind of in that rekindling stages now. Like I'm an athlete traveling around the world, but they're now on Instagram. Instagram was not a thing when I was their age, young growing up, and so it's like they can like connect with me in different ways. So it's really cool that social media has been a way to connect families and different things. Is they didn't even know what I was doing for a long time, and then they see like you're in the newspaper. I'm like, yeah. What do you do? I'm doing sport, Team USA. Are you trying to go to the Olympics? Now I'm cool. Now I'm the cool sister. Before I was just like, oh, you're just Mystique. You're some whatever.
Yeah, before it was like, wait a minute, how does a girl from Virginia end up in all this ice like world,
Yeah.
like this ice sport world, right? So, how do you think growing up in such a large family, you're now in a very individual sport, a very like a sport that is very much like you, yourself, and I. Do you feel like there's a part of you that was drawn to almost, you said you're Zen at the beginning of the line. Do you feel like there's a part of you that's drawn to sort of that Zen, that quiet, that like peace that I don't know how you achieve when you're
Yeah.
hurtling yourself down a nice track,
Yeah.
but it sounds like you found it. Do you feel like there's a part of you that was drawn to that because of this sort of like quote unquote cheaper by the dozen, like, that's like the movie that kind of I guess showcases what it would feel like
Yeah.
to grow up in a family that large. Do you feel like there's a part of you that was drawn to that peace and that serenity because of the, I imagine, constant chaos that is growing up with that many
Yeah,
siblings?
I would say so. Like I run too quiet. I embrace it. I was very much a reader growing up, so that any form of escapism was really cool for me. I enjoyed the fantasy and all that other like fun realms to go explore in novels and books. So it's probably not the safest 1 minute of silence you could possibly ask for, but it's pretty nice when things go well. So it's definitely an interesting experience because like I don't like roller coasters. I'm terrified of roller coasters. Like you can drag me onto one maybe, but I don't like it. And then if you go talk about the highway, I don't like speeding on the highway. Like I do have a heavy foot, but like it's a different feeling because I'm by myself. I'm an inch off the ice and I'm in control, loosely, vaguely control. And it doesn't make sense to my mom. I can't explain it to her. She's never gonna accept the answer I give her because it doesn't seem safe at all. But it's a very serene chaos because it can go south quickly, very easily, and otherwise it's just you're just there. You're just present, and it's one of the things where like kind of like back to the multi mindset. Like I made a mistake 2 curves back, but I'm now dealing with the aftermath, and you have to kind of let it run, let it flow. If you think about reacting in that moment, you cause a problem for down the track. So it's you just accept the mistake and you kind of roll with it. So it's just more of just embracing things as they are and just keeping it going forward, keep the momentum moving forward, not looking back.
Yeah. How you mentioned your mom's reaction. I'm curious, like when you called them up and you said, "Hey," because you leaving for college, right, in Charlotte was kind of the first time that you really left your family, and then you're not only going off for college, and now you're like, "Oh yeah, and by the way, one of the best bobsledders ever in the world reached out to me personally, and she would like me to come to this tryout for this bobsledding situation." What was your family's reaction?
I don't think I actually told my mom. Like my mom just sees me come and go, so she kind of just assumed I was just out and about. And then I was like, "Yeah, I'm going up to New York." She's like, "What's in New York?" Like, "Oh, this is nothing big, whatever, no big deal." So then I go up, do the rookie thing, and then come back. And I went okay, and then go back to school. And then on this one trip from driving school, actually, um, we didn't have speed suits, so we just had like a helmet, some goggles, and like you wear a sweater, some leggings, and you go down the track. You're getting beat up. You're coming back purple and blue and black. And so I came home and I had a t-shirt on, so my arm was exposed, and it was very purple and black and blue. And she's coming downstairs, and I came to the house because I was driving through because she lives in Virginia. I was going down to Charlotte still, and I was eating a bowl of cereal, just minding my business. And she's like, "What's on your arm?" I was like, "Oh, nothing. I hit the chicane." She's like, what's a chicane?" I was like, "Oh, it's this." So I'm trying to explain this to her. She doesn't care. "Why are you purple and blue?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know how to drive yet. I don't know how to steer what?" And I was like, "I'll just show you the video." She has not let it go since. She was like, "Why on earth would you leave the sport of track and field to go throw yourself down? There's no logic. There's nothing you can say that's gonna make a mom like, okay, this is a good idea." So I was like, "I'm going to bed, and I'll see you when I see you, mom. But until then, like I'm okay. I'm okay." So now we're on like a 2 week lag. I don't tell my mom where I'm going. I tell her where I was, and so she sees the aftermath on Instagram if I post it, because she's very like overwhelmed. You know how moms are. Just no,
Yeah,
oh my
yeah.
gosh, yeah. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's okay. I'm in China now. What? Yeah, this was Norway. This was 3 weeks ago, mom. You're a little late. We're moving on. So I kind of keep her a little bit in the dark and a delayed time release. Like, we're very delayed, just to make sure she doesn't overreact. Because she can't be mad if I'm on the podium. She sees the bruise from 3 weeks ago. So it's like, what are you gonna do, mom? It's over.
It's almost like it's almost like that trend on TikTok where you see all these people going like, "Oh, all these other people are like checking in, telling their parents like, "Oh, I'm engaged. Oh, I just had a kid." Da, 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 da. I meanwhile like telling my mom, "Hey, I survived this most recent excursion or
Yep.
whatever." And I remember I'm like a bit of an adrenaline junkie. I don't really know. I don't know. I won't say that I won't try skeleton, but I don't know that I'm that adrenaline junkie
I
oriented.
mean,
Um, I mean, but I did like a bungee jumping thing in South
hmm.
Africa off this bridge one time.
Oof.
And I remember like my dad calling and he's like, "You're going to the bridge, aren't you?" And I was like, "What? No, not at all." And he was like, "I know you're going to the bridge." And he used my full government name. And I was like,
Oof.
"It's gonna be fine, Dad. Everything's fine." And that was the last time that like any trip where I was like, "Oh yeah, I found this adventure. I might do this. I might do." Now it's like, nope. I'm gonna tell you when I make it through,
Yep.
and like it just saves everybody a little bit of heartache,
Yep. 100%.
saves everyone some anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, so in addition to obviously you have like set some records for the Americans recently, and it's been so sick to watch you do that, not just because of how long of a drought it has been for Team USA, but because for the longest time, most of the sled sports, right, skeleton, luge, and bobsled, have been predominantly white and predominantly male. And you, Elena Myers Taylor, and a few others are really challenging the way that people see athletes and what is possible for athletes from all over the world, from all different backgrounds. How is it to carry a burden and a privilege of being one of the first in your sport?
I think a lot of my mental fortitude comes because of Alana and Vanetta Flowers. They were the pioneers. They dealt with the brunt of a lot of the systemic issues that were in play. And it's not to say I don't see my fair share of things. It's definitely unique because I also operating in a separate discipline. But for me, very early on, I earned a lot of respect from my international competitors and it's in the world itself of the sliding sports because of my push. Now with the push, there has been some systemic commentary about that, but that's a different conversation. And I think it's just it was a fresh look for the sport. Because before it was just if you had the right technology, you were gonna win. If you were a part of the German program, you were gonna win. And so we changed the narrative. We're challenging the narrative as far as like, okay, if we put someone on a basic setup, but if we give them a push, what happens? And oh, okay, we can have these results. Well, if we give them a little bit more of an advantage, maybe better runners, maybe a better sled or a newer sled. Oh, okay, we're actually we're on the podium, so let's try to see if we can go for some records. And so I think a lot of the challenges that we're seeing, and what's great is I'm not shouldering it alone. There's athletes like Tabby, Valentina for Italy, Tabby's with GB, and then we have even some of the other U.S. athletes that are of color and the Asian athletes for China and Korea who are challenging that it's not just a predominantly white sport anymore. Like, it's athletes who are passionate to learn. So it's a sport where everyone has opportunity to learn the ropes. So we study, I mean, the original athletes were white, so we're going to study them. And then how can we add a little bit more of an advantage? Like, what do we have that's unique to us that we can actually bring to the line or bring down the track? And so with that bit of a collaboration that respect as far as like studying our predecessors, we're able to take what we were given and what we now know and push it further. And so for me, like my learning style did not mesh with a lot of the coaches I had early on, but then I got paired with Matt Antoine, who is a 6'4" guy, which is not me, a different weight class, a different sliding era, but he's very like analytical, and we speak the same language as far as coaching and like learning. So it's been a really good pairing for me. So that willingness to collaborate, the willingness to be a student of the sport and continue to learn, because as much as we want to change everything, sliding is basic physics, and you just have to not panic in the physics, but it's just something you have to learn how to harness. You're not trying to control it, you're trying to just harness it and guide yourself down faster.
Yeah. How did you develop that ability to harness um, the speed, the physics, to where you don't panic? Because I think, again, as a gymnast, I can relate to that a lot, right? Like, there's a lot of, I was terrible at science, absolutely horrible, but like I understood, the point in the flip that I needed to hit a certain position in order to land on my feet. Like, I understood a few of those sort of basic gravitational understandings of how to tap into that and not panic, ideally. I mean, there were definitely times that I panicked. I ended up hurt, or I ended up, on my back or whatever. How have you learned to harness the physics of it? And it went from the first time down, you were like, yeah, nope, never doing this again, to then by the top of the track, you were like, what's the harm? Let's try it one more time.
Yeah. I wish I could say I was A+ student in physics. I understand centrifugal for whatever the word, I don't even know the word terminology, but
Yeah.
I don't. I really don't. I still struggle when we go on track walks. Where's the pressure? I'll feel it, I guess. So a lot of the time, and that does kind of slow the learning curve a little bit, is I can't see it. Like, if you talk me through it, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But I'm more on a feel, and that's also a product of our helmets, our visors. So there's different helmet styles, but the one that's most common is called the UVEX, and we have a visibility, and it's not too bad, but when you're under pressure, I really can't see. And then they made a new helmet where it's a little bit bigger visor, so you could look through your brow potentially if have it. But so we're very limited in our visual. So a lot of what we do is based on feel. So unfortunately, you get limited runs, so you have to figure out the feel quickly. So I have 6 runs to, is the pressure the right spot? Did I release it too soon? And it's not like you're shouldering it like trying to shoulder check someone in hockey. It's a very fine amount of pressure because you're just trying to bend the sled just a little bit, and it could go really well, it could go really bad. And so there's that fine, delicate balance of like how much is too much, how much is too little. So I only have 6 runs to figure that out for a mile of ice, which is the key of that is you can't look at the whole track. You have to pick out key corners. And so where are the trouble spots, where are the most common issues or speed loss. And once you figure those out, then okay, hopefully the rest of it connects. And then if it's a common track, then you'll see it again next year. So you keep building every year. So you can't think of the big magnitude, the huge aspect of it, because it's overwhelming and you're not going to figure it out. But that's theoretically when you have your other teammates to rely on to get feedback. But if you're just solo, then you have to be realistic and like, okay, I have 6 runs, there's 12 curves, I can only focus on 3. So which ones are the most important? And then race day, I can't think about any of that. I have to go off based on my feel. And so I don't think about getting height in 3. I don't think about pushing the pressure in 4. I just, my brain turns off, and which is why it looks like trash sometimes in my races, because I just let it go. But if it's going forward and it's fast, then it's good. But you don't want to like do too much input. So it's learning to do all of like the chaotic studying beforehand, and then during the test, the exam, you just got to execute.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, but yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, we just have to execute as we hurdle ourselves down a mile-long ice track going, I'm sorry, what is the top speed that you hit?
Uh, 70 mid, maybe 80. Yeah.
Miles an hour.
Yeah.
Just to like finish that thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 70 to 80 miles an hour down a track, and we just have to like focus on just barely
Mhm.
moving our shoulder
Yep.
throughout the thing. For you, obviously you're still pretty new in the sport, looking to make this like big Olympic debut in 2026. Briefly, can you tell me about the mixed event? Because this is going to be new for the 2026 Winter Games. Is there's a mixed event within skeleton. And now you want to talk about giving up control. Girl, you're not doing this with somebody else.
Yeah. So that is like an introvert's worst nightmare. I have to give up control. um, so
She's like, wait, actually, I think I'm better. She's like, this is my most terrible nightmare.
It's exciting because now that's the one thing I can bring from track and field is the reaction start. And unfortunately for Lake Placid, I had a bad reaction and time because I was just so tired. But so to go backwards a little bit, skeleton was a single medal opportunity for the longest time. So this is now an opportunity to get 2 medals, per discipline. If you think about or gender-wise, if you think about that way. And essentially, I don't know whose idea this was. I don't know who thought this through, but I think they could have used some consultation.
You're like, but I'm gonna find them.
I will find them, and we're gonna have a conversation. Because in the luge event, which is the feet first, they have individual men and women, mixed doubles doubles for both genders, and then they have like a relay. I'm not fully sure how the relay works, but I do know for luge when they go down, there's a paddle they have to hit, and that signals for the next person to go. Skeleton, we can't do that, so they're like, okay, what can we do that's engaging but can tag in someone else? So then they may have this reaction. So they have this light system, and they've changed it a few times since I've done it to kind of work out the kinks. And it's the best way I can describe it. It's kind of like NASCAR when you have like the lights going down the countdown. And so basically you have like 5 light strips that go through, and by the time you hit the second one, you can't move, so you're on your position. And then once all the lights are red, it turns off, and then there's a sound. There's an audio sound. So I like that because it's track and field, because sometimes the light strip you can't see it, and so you're just standing there forever just waiting, and then the gun goes off, and then you can go. So what's unique about this is in the regular traditional event, from the block to the red line is 15 meters. That's free energy. That doesn't start the clock. The clock does not start till you cross the red line. Now with the mixed event, we just added 15 meters. So the clock starts as soon as your foot leaves the block, or the device in the sled moves. So if you're not a good push athlete, this sucks. So because you have now 15 more meters to run to try to, kill the time because you're now going up against the next girl from the next nation. And so that's advantageous to me because I have a great push. Generally, I have an average reaction time, and that's extra velocity I have going in, or a bigger advantage I have to build on. So the other girls are trying to chase me down, depending on the order, or I'm trying to chase them down. Now, the challenge is you have this push, the reaction time, and the downtime. I did my job. All I can do is sit in the leader's box and wait for my teammate to come down and do the same thing. And most of my teammates do not come, on the male side, do not come from track and field. So this sound system makes them nervous because no one wants to false start. If you false start,
Right.
you're virtually out of the medals, and there's no shot. So everyone's like freaking out and shaking. I'm like, just breathe, please. Just don't move, whatever you do. And so once they get past that, then you get to the sliding part, and then they can kind of relax. But we need that first 15 to mount to add up to her. So it's kind of like a weird balance of like you have to be spot on, you want power, but then you have to be chill again. So it's like a weird, like, I don't even know. You're spiking your emotions, your energy, and then you have to be zen again. So I think it's really unique. It's different. There's still some kinks we have to work out for sure, as far as like, because just like mentioned before, every ramp's different. So some ramps you need to give it all from the beginning. Other ramps you have to build into it. But when you have a reaction, your reaction is to go. So now you have to know how to pace it, or it doesn't matter, just go. Because you can't stop. You can't, well, should I slow down? Should I build in? No, you just got to go. So it's definitely a unique experience. The pairings make it interesting because some nations will flip athletes around between different mixed teams. So anything can happen, literally, which is what makes it exciting. Anything can happen. You know, it could be a German sweep, it could be a upset, it could be anything, honestly.
Yeah, for somebody who self-admittedly doesn't like roller coasters, it sounds like every single time you hit the ice, it's a roller coaster, actually. It may be of
Yeah,
emotions, but it sounds like a roller coaster.
for sure, 100%.
So, this has been so fun to get to know you. I think the last question that I always like to end the interview section of is there anything that you just want to share? Because I think it's so fun, not only to get to know you as a person, but skeleton. Like I said, it's one of those sports that every 4 years people are like, holy shit, this is insane. And like, these people must be nuts. But meeting you, it's like, you're very much the opposite. Like, you're very calculated, you're very calm, you're very zen, you're very much a control, like someone who likes to be in control, also same. And so it's like this dichotomy of like our perception of these athletes with who you actually are as a person.
Yeah. Um, I'll just say I watch the Golden Girls every year. I watch the full seasons, all of it, and it's like my nice little reset. I crochet. I cross stitch. Like I'm a very calm, chill person. This is my one little spike of like chaos, and I can't explain what happened or how we got here. But yeah, I like Shirley Temples. I like to drink Shirley Temples. I'm not really crazy. I like cheese. You know, I'm a normal person. And I think that's what's really interesting is like when we see these sport adrenaline things, you think X Games, and I think in some capacities it could rival that. But a lot of the athletes on this sports are very skeleton, specifically are introverts. We're not very chaotic personalities. We have general interests, like, you know, and like we can appreciate other speed sports. Like a lot of us are F1 fans, or we like to watch the race, like NASCAR and stuff like that. But would I do it? No. Like I would watch it for sure. You know, I would go cheer or whatever that's entailing. Or you know, you have your normal sports fans like football, soccer, and all that. But um, you're not gonna catch me jumping off a bridge, parachuting, bungee, nothing. Absolutely not. No. I don't even do the
I
wave
mean,
pool. Like no.
she's like, this is my one thing.
This is
You
it.
get this, like, it's like all of the chaos gets like tucked into this one kernel of your
Yep.
life
Yep.
of skeleton.
Mhm.
I
Well,
love that. Well, I personally am so stoked about it because I have loved getting to know you this season and watching you this season and being like, it's just so fun to learn to like literally kind of pull back the visor. Cause I think that's the other thing, right? Like we rarely get to see you guys. There's these sports that are, um, you know, have helmets versus don't. And I think that's one of the things is like, y'all come down here looking like a menace. Like y'all
mhm.
come down looking like superheroes in these huge helmets, these like speed suits. And you're like, yeah, must be Superwoman. And it turns out, yes, inside that suit, but so much more. She's a crocheting Superwoman who is making a difference in the world just by existing as her authentic self. So I'm really grateful that we get this kernel of chaos from you.
No, thanks for having me. It's been nice
Um,
chatting.
yeah, girl. And we're not even done. We're just transitioning our little
Yeah.
segments here to
Sweet.
this is called Something to Sip On, which I think you may have given us a little teaser just a minute ago. But this is called Something to Sip On. It is brought to you by the Sports Bra, which is the first women's sports focused bar
Yes.
in the entire world. Jenny is a dear friend of mine, and I just love this. I love this. Love everything that she's doing up there in Portland. So, Mystique, the week of your episode, there's going to be a drink called the Mystique, which, by the way, is already a
Ooh.
fantastic drink name.
Hey.
Choose your favorite cocktail or mocktail that you
Mm.
want to be the Mystique.
Oh boy, I am really bad at this stuff. Um, hmm. I'm not very well versed on different I'm a fruity person for sure. So, I don't know. Like,
I
cherries are
mean, we can
speaking to
go with
me.
Shirley Temple.
I like the Shirley
Yeah.
Temple style. Yeah, if you want to add a little something to that to spice it up, by all means. But I do love me a good Shirley Temple.
I mean, it's the go-to.
Oh
It's like,
yeah,
that's just why fix what ain't broke, you know?
there you go. Yeah.
So it's Shirley Temple, the week of Mystique's episode, up at the Sports Bra. If you're going to Portland at any point, A, you should. It's one of my favorite cities. And then B, you got to check out the Sports Bra because they're going to have a fantastic Shirley Temple called the Mystique. All right. And then to wrap things up, we have our Powered Up segment. This is our Q&A segment that originally was called Rapid Fire, and then we gave up on it being Rapid Fire. So this is just Q&A. We're just getting to know you.
Okay.
First question, coffee or tea?
Tea.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Cookie dough. Cookie dough.
Oh, good one. What is your go-to meal before or after skeletoning? Can I turn it into a verb?
In season, I am very much like the traditional Korean, but I will kill a pizza quick.
Ooh.
My mom's from Tennessee, she's black, and my dad's from Seoul, Korea. So,
Oh, cool. Okay. So a little taste of home
oh
in there
yeah,
in the season to give a
yes,
little.
yep,
I love that.
comfort food for sure.
Okay. Are you, and I feel like I kind of want to guess the answers to these questions, but I won't. Are you a early bird or a night owl?
A night owl, for
Night.
sure.
Oh, I would have gone the other way.
No, I am
Fascinating.
very active at night, and that's what sucks because I have to go to bed to get up in the morning to train.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. What is the favorite place your sport has taken you?
I would say Koenigsegg is a unique spot on tour. There's a lot of history there. Um, Historically from World War II, which is not the part I'm mentioning, but like it's very scenic, it's very beautiful. But the track is down here, and then there's like this sea or whatever you want to call it, like a lake, and up top is the Eagle's Nest for where Hitler hung out. So that's not necessarily why I'm talking about it, but like it is there, but it's a very beautiful scenic route for the mountains. You can see it's very pretty.
Wow. In Germany.
Yes, Bavaria.
Wow. Very cool. If you were not a skeleton athlete, what would you want to be an Olympic athlete in?
Speed skating.
Oh, good one. Dang. Another Zen, another like really, really high consequence, but Zen kind of sport.
hmm
I'm sensing a trend here. Okay, what is your favorite vacation spot?
Ooh, that's tough because I do like the beach, but I like the vibes of like a mountain retreat to go read. I like that better.
Mm, it's very fair. There's nothing better than a cabin in the woods in the summer reading a good book.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
it's really good. I also was a reader growing up. My mom used to make fun of me because I would literally run into things because I was reading my books. Um, what is the best piece of advice you have ever gotten?
I would say actually that's a good one. So before I got into the sport of skeleton, I grew up one of 11, middle class, limitations, whatever, and unfortunately, definitely much more limiting on what girls can and can't do. Just culturally, there was some limitations, but I learned outside of that. But before I got into the sport specifically, I heard this on a motivational YouTube reel, like a YouTube video thing, but it came out later as a quote too. But basically, don't let money limit you from trying new things. And as a broke college student, that is a very hard thing to stomach because you don't have any money to do anything. But I think it was definitely a challenge in the beginning because skeleton is definitely historically a rich person sport. Um, it's not necessarily accessible to the suburban kid at all. So if you're doing it, you have to be put into those circles to do it. But I definitely see that in other realms because the sport has taken me all around the world, and it has shown me different opportunities that I would not have otherwise been shown because of the circles I was in because I limiting as far as exposure. So, and with that is just saying yes to opportunities. Like it sounded insane. Like who does skeleton? Why would you do that? That's dumb. But here we are. We said yes a couple times, and then now we're one of the top skeleton athletes in the world, and we're competing to try to go to the game. So, um, money is still a factor, but it's just one of those things where like if you just more open to that possibility of like what could be, then I think you just the sky's the limit. So just being open to opportunities for sure.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the message that you got from Alana Myers Taylor inviting you to this camp?
Mm.
And yeah.
So basically, and it sounds like this was more of a routine thing. This is pre-COVID, so life was different back then. But we had like she sent like an email blast to different coaches around the country, strength conditioning, track and field. I don't know what database she used, but I'm sure there's something that is accessible. And so my college coach, Jim Barenkamp, got an email, and originally actually this email he got the email and he's like they're asking if you have any athletes who'd be interested or you think would be a good fit for trying out, send them our way or give them our information. And so my coach reached out to my teammate, Nikki Esquire, because she was a national champion in like I forget the events, but she was a sprinter. She did the long jump and the 100 meter, and she did really well. And so by numbers, she was someone they were looking for. And so he had her on the list, like, hey, go try out. I just happened to be sleeping on her couch, so this invite wasn't even for me. And I was like, I'll go just to hang out. Why not? And so I went down. The combine that they had was hosted in South Carolina. So I went down, did the number, I did the events, and I scored high enough to be in the pool of interest because I didn't quite hit the number they're looking for. I was like 6 points short. And then they're like, okay, we'll give you a call. And so then I got a call eventually, or to come up to the rookie camp in Lake Placid, and that was like a whole undertaking because like now I got to buy a ticket to fly up there. So the main thing is like I originally wasn't part of the initial thought process. I just was a product of circumstance, like not circumstance. I was just in proximity. I was in the right place at the right time to hear about it. So I talked to my coach, like, do you think I should do it? And he's like, sure, why not? You're there. You might as well give it a shot and see what happens.
And that goes back to exactly what you said, which is the advice is say yes, be open to these opportunities, because how freaking life-changing has it already been?
Yeah.
And you haven't even, like, that's incredible. That is so cool. With that, what is the best piece, or what is the thing that your parents taught you that you feel like you apply the most in your everyday life?
My one thing about my mom is like she was really much big into the reading for me. Like she would take me to the library and I would different phase for Mystique, just nose in the book, just very quiet. And now I'm a little more vocal. I gotta like defend and protect my interests and all that stuff in the sport. But one thing that she definitely translated is just dreaming big. Just don't be limited to what's in front of you. Like I always like the escapism of reading, the escapism of just exploring new worlds was always something she definitely fostered. And she didn't know what I was reading. She didn't know what I was talking about half the time, but she's like, you read that, Mystique. You keep reading, Mystique. And so I think that's something that definitely translated is just being a dreamer, just being someone that just is shooting for the start. You could be landing in space, who cares, but you're up there. You're doing something, and eventually it'll work its way out to be something bigger, but just not selling the dream short. Definitely aspiring for more.
I love that. Sorry. That's such an incredible thing to have passed on. And I think that is one of the most underrated aspects of books, because I just recently got into fantasy. I've been much more like a historic fiction girly. I really like learning about the women who did incredible things in history that we have never known about. And I just recently got into fantasy, and I always was a little bit like, oh, what's the point of this? Like, I really want to learn something that's like impactful and like, I didn't think that that's what fantasy could be. But then it was like, oh no, this is like one of the most pure forms of imagination that you can tap into. And how epic is it to be able to tap into somebody's imagination that literally created another world, and then like bring that back to your world and imagine, how big this tiny little dream could be for you, how much it could change your life, how much, because if their imagination can create a world, like my imagination we can create a podcast.
Right.
We can create opportunity for women in these sports. It's just such a cool, such an underrated aspect of what you get when you open a book.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. And then my last question for you is, what does PowHErful mean to you?
I would like to think that being powerful is it's just raw. Like it's not artificial. It's not something you can just formulate in a lab. It's down to like the core belief in just oneself. And I think a lot of it does come and is influenced by like nurture growing up, like being raised by to be confident, to be, curious, to aspire for more. But in some realms, like for me, like I did have that support for reading, but as far as like me being a my dad's very traditional, so women were not seen to be more vocal, aspire for degrees or, have hold positions of power. So I had to learn that on my own or through other women around me saying that you can take up space, you can stand up for yourself, you can defend yourself, you can protect your own interests, you can have interests and your own desires. And so I think a lot of it just comes from that curiosity to constantly keep protecting your own inner fire, which is the core of your
Mm.
being, to try to aspire for more. And more could just be looking for more peace. More could be looking for, to pave a way for the next generation. Whatever that fire is for yourself, whatever keeps you going is protecting that and nurturing that and making sure that it does withstand the test of time as far as, or the trials and tribulations you experience in life. And I think it's the ability to have the freedom to aspire for something as great as being a mover, a shaker in the world, or just being able to have peace for yourself. It doesn't know any shapes or like any limits. It's whatever you want it to be, but you protect it with all costs. And I think that's really important to me, is like seeing people being able to be happy and aspire for whatever level of greatness they just see for themselves or others, but uninhibited in the ways they want to.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm going to think about that for the rest of the day. The curiosity to cultivate and protect your inner fire. That's it. That's what it's about. I'm so grateful that you have maintained that curiosity, because now we all get to be inspired by this inner fire that you have. You show it on the track. You show it in these interviews. You show it as a part of this huge family that is so lucky to have you as the second oldest. And I'm just so grateful that you took the time to come on this podcast. Cannot wait to root you on in Italy next year. Fingers crossed, and wherever you go next, because I think we are just starting to see what that inner fire is capable of. And I'm just, thank you for taking the time, Mystique.
No, thank you for having me. These have been awesome questions, awesome interview, and uh, thank you for just being curious. Honestly, like the sport looks so weird and quirky, but when you get down to it, like it's simple, but it's not. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Maybe next Olympic cycle, maybe my curiosity will come up. We'll do an in-person situation. You can take me
Yeah,
on the baby track.
yeah, we
Baby
have two
track.
tracks. You can take your pick of Lake Placid or Park City, and
Deal.
yeah, we'll get you fitted, get you down the track, and then we'll get your feedback. Immediate reaction.
Immediate reaction. Put the
Immediate
mic in
reaction.
her face immediately. Flip the script. I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time. We are so grateful to have you on the PowHERful Podcast, and we'll root for you soon. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next week, Pod Squad. Thank you.
This is a reminder to check us out every Tuesday, everywhere you get your podcasts. And if you really enjoy this and don't want to miss an episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button.